But after all, what is this? Is Teen Titans Go the Dragon Ball version? So guys, how are you? I hope you're doing well. I'm the Monio, the interdimensional demon that talks the most about Dragon Ball on YouTube, and you're on my channel. But what is this Dragon Ball Daima? It had already been reported a while ago that there would be a new Dragon Ball anime, and everyone thought it would be the continuation of the Dragon Ball Super manga, the Moro Saga, Granola, and all these new arcs that we currently have in the manga and which have not yet been adapted into an anime. But inexplicably what we will have in 2024 will be this Dragon Ball GT version of the characters. We recently had some news about this anime, and the synopsis was that Goku and the Supreme Kai would be transformed into children with the power of the Dragon Balls. But from what we saw in the trailer, all the main characters will be transformed into children, and it was still announced that the anime will be released directly on the internet, and not by a TV channel, but the script would be by Akira Toriyama himself. The first thing that I find very strange about this anime is that it is advertised as having a script by Akira Toriyama, since Akira is no longer involved with many Dragon Ball projects. For example, the canonical Dragon Ball Super manga which is currently released, it's not Toriyama who makes it, it's Toyotaro. Toritama only supervises and approves. Generally Toriyama currently limits himself to writing the scripts for the films. It was like that in the Broly film, and in the superhero film. So I find it very strange that Toriyama is directly involved in an anime that seems to be a parallel plot and that doesn't continue the Super. In fact, this anime reminds me a lot of Dragon Ball Heroes, which was also an anime released directly on the internet, and which basically served to promote the Dragon Ball card games they were launching, and introduce the new characters present in the game. So even though in the anime's promotion it is said that it is canonical and that it was Akira who wrote it, for me, this new anime is much more like a filler, like Dragon Ball Heroes, than a canonical saga. The reason for the characters to become children is probably to be successful with children, who were the audience that watched Dragon Ball the most at the time the anime was being shown in Japan, and this is also the reason why the anime doesn't have more blood, because it wasn't allowed at the time and in the age range of the anime's audience, and I think the idea is precisely to reach a new audience, and although many people don't accept it, the children's audience is the most profitable. And often it becomes the target audience for a certain work, and that is why we see the infantilization of many franchises today, such as Teen Titans, Ben 10, Thundercats, and many others. And this is not necessarily a problem if you consider that it is an anime focused on this audience, and that we will eventually have adaptations of the most current manga sagas, and these can be aimed at a slightly older audience. I think that instead of this boring plot of turning everyone into children, we could have an anime adapting something more interesting. For example, whoever played the game Dragon Ball Xenoverse knows the Supreme Kai of Time, a great character who could be canonized and who it would be an excellent addition to Dragon Ball lore, as the game tells the story of the organization that cares for and protects timelines, something similar to the TVA that we see in the Loki series. But the Monio, canonizing a character from a game? That would be very difficult to happen. And I'll tell you that not so much, since this already happened recently with Android 21, created for the game Dragon Ball FighterZ, and which was canonized in the film Dragon Ball Superhero, and we discovered that her appearance was based on the late wife of the Dr. Gero, who is the mother of Jivo, Dr. Gero's son who had his appearance and personality used for Android 16. But going back to Dragon Ball Daima, although I'm not very excited, I intend to watch it. There are many animes that can surprise us, especially when we have low expectations. In the trailer we can see that the plot will probably involve Hell, and this villain that we see in the trailer I would bet is the current ruler of Hell, and because this villain is very short and resembles typical Dragon Ball comedy characters, such as Pilaf, this villain doesn't give me a real feeling of danger or threat. Still talking about this villain, we even have an interesting scene in which he is looking through a screen, an image of the wizard Babidi, together with Majin Buu, and it is interesting to remember that Babidi controlled Dabura, who was the king of Hell at the time, and who was transformed into a lackey by Babidi. Even along with this villain, we can see another character who appears to be a Supreme Kai, but from the little we see of him, he doesn't remind me of any I've ever seen, nor those who were killed by Majin Buu. We can also see a kind of bar or establishment that also appears to be in hell, indicating that a good part of the plot and fights must take place there. Another thing that I found interesting is the fact that apparently the Supreme Kai will have an active role in the story, as suggested in the initial synopsis, and that's cool, as it's a character that was never well developed, and the last time that we saw in action in the Majin Buu saga, since in the Zamasu saga, he only makes a small appearance, and the fact that he participates makes me think that this will be related to the other character that we see together with the villain, and that, apparently, is a Supreme Kai. Will it be a new Supreme Kai? Or some that we never got to know? And that is entirely possible since not all of them were murdered by Majin Buu, like Old Kai, who was trapped by Beerus inside the Z sword. But the point is that I think these two characters will have some bond, and perhaps take on antagonistic roles, which could be very interesting. One thing I really liked about the trailer was the quality of the animation, which looks incredible. Seriously guys, look at some frames and tell me what you think. For me, this is probably the most beautiful animation ever done in Dragon Ball. The drawings of the characters are magnificent. I believe that in the anime scenes, the quality will not be as high, but even so we can say that the animation will probably be of good quality, as this was one of the biggest complaints from those who watched Dragon Ball Super in anime, which had very poor animation quality at several times. In the trailer we can also see some fan service. The fact that Goku has become a child is already a fan service of the classic Dragon Ball, and he even appears using his bat in some scenes. Combining this with the fact that it is said in the trailer that this will be a story to celebrate 40 years of the Dragon Ball franchise, it is clear that this anime will work much more as a special in honor of the entire franchise, rather than as a new epic saga in which a new great threat will be presented. So I have my expectations well defined for this anime, as something secondary, focused much more on comedy than action, and which will serve to fill this gap until the new manga sagas are eventually adapted. But what about you? Did you like the Dragon Ball Daima trailer? What are your expectations for the anime? Leave it in the comments, and subscribe to follow the next videos. Until next time my people, demonic hugs.